As Mr. Balazaka, a petroleum engineer and chartered accountant, joins us via the telephone now. Thank you for your time, Mr. Zaka.
Thank you.
Okay, so I was going to let's start. What do you make of this? I mean, the amendment request seems to focus only on the administration part. How important is this amendment to the implementation or effective implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act? Let's start from there.
You remember when Mr. President assented to the bill and it became an act, there were feelers, remarks, for and against, what he did. While some applauded it, some felt maybe he should have taken time, to review things, because he was just coming into the country. I think, was it after probably a sick leave or something like that? But he came into the country, and before people knew, he signed it. He assented, and a lot of people felt maybe before his coming, some I's needed to be dotted and some T's needed to be crossed. But after a while, a lot of people felt, well, it was better for us to have at least a working document than having nothing at all. So from that angle, many people felt, there will be amendments ongoing. And because a steering committee also was set up to look at things, people also felt that steering body was going to review other concerns, and with time, we were going to keep improving. So many of us were not surprised when he sent for those amendments. And like you rightly said, you said the amendments that he is requesting for now was purely or was looking more administrative than any other thing.
Exactly.
I agree to some extent, because most of the time everybody hinges success or failure of projects on leadership. My understanding is this, that administrative section will provide leadership. Time will tell. But once you have proper leadership, that simply means somehow, somewhere, all the other arms will be rightfully guided. Because leadership basically has to do with the driver. So the team that will constitute the driver will have basically the navigation radar. And if you get it right, then you are likely to be on the path of success, growth, and greatness. And in the context of the oil and gas industry, 1,001 things are likely to come up. But the bottom line is this: I will want a situation where one way or the other, the price of diesel that I bought, at 325 naira per liter, I will be happy if a liter of diesel goes back to less than probably 150 or 100 naira per liter. Bottom line is, I will be very happy if the price of cooking gas that is soaring, and we know that we are supposed to do something about climate change. People will not get so discouraged, feel so bad to the point where people will start going back to firewood.
Right.
Because as I speak to you now, there are people are looking for firewood in Lagos and charcoal, and they can't even find.
So point made there.
Should be aimed towards that.
Yes, an important point there, and that would depend on the proper implementation and the efficacy of the implementation. But let's talk more about this this amendment. Well, there's some who are saying, look, why should, because some part of the amendment, let me just quote part of the amendment, which says that is also seeking to exempt 7 public officers from the established confirmation process for political appointment. So according to Buhari now, in this request, this will ensure effective management of the regulatory institutions through uniform implementation of public service. So the question now will be, why should this be a free pass or the platform to which someone rises to a political office or appointment?
There is something we have always said, and that has been very clear in even the failure of our economic and political leaders. And whenever you want to deal with the aspects that is supposed to bring a nation out of economic woes, out of economic despair, you go for technocrats. And when I talk about technocrats, you go for people that have demonstrated some level of competence and dexterity. When you want to heal, when you want to carry out activities that will crystallize into getting to a positive destination, you go for the right people. It's just like when you want people to board a plane. You know, at that time, the real pilot, all you are after in the pilot's attributes is that he must have the ability, he must have the dexterity, he must have the mental strength, he must have the focus to pick passengers from point A to point B. At that point, it is not his religion that is important. It is not his height. It is not the color of his skin. It is not whether his regional affiliation or even a sectarian affiliation. And if you don't do that, you will never get the right people to come out. We see it everywhere.
That's a point you've made there.
Once that is brought in, then they will negatively punctuate everything. And in Nigerian parlance, we will say you will poto everything. And once something is poto-potoed, then somehow, somewhere, you find yourself in murky waters.
Let's look at some concerns that have been raised as well. First, of course, there are two institutions here. One has to do with the regulatory and commercialization of activity, and of course the other one has to do with administration or trying to manage. So you have the Nigeria Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, which is the NPRA. You also have the Nigerian Upstream Regulatory Commission as well, which has to do with the commercialization. So let's look at that part. Now, there's so much power vested around the office of the minister, who has been removed from the board at this time, given the amendment request. But then you still have a power around the minister as an individual who is also going to be dominating in this regard. So how do you think we can control and address this?
Okay, you know, the good thing about a bill or an act like this, it is open for discussion. You invited me to talk in my capacity as an oil and gas analyst, but that does not mean whatever I will say will be in consonance or in concurrence with Mr. A or Mrs. A or Miss A and the rest. When we discuss like this, the intention is that at the end of the day, in national interest, we should make progress. And based on that, if in those days when we were discussing the petroleum industry bill, you know, there were basically probably three things that stalled it. One was the power of the minister. Second, how to handle host community. And third, how to handle frontier exploration. Even like 10 years ago, those were the main concerns. Until today, they are. But let me tell you something, my own perspective, and it was probably at variance with some people. I knew that in those days, let me even quote it, in the days of Gizani, Allison, people felt the minister abused her power. But unfortunately, what they were doing at that time, to me, I'm giving you my own perspective now, they were looking at the human being rather than the office. So
right.
For me, I didn't like it when I heard that the power of the minister needed to be diluted. And let me explain to you why. It's my explanation that matters now. As far as I am concerned, every country you go to, every organized country you go to, the minister of defense is always a very powerful minister. The minister of finance is always a very powerful minister. Then the minister for energy, in our own case, the minister for petroleum will always be a powerful minister. So So what I keep telling people is this: instead of diluting the powers of the minister, because you felt the minister was abusing the power, why not take time and search for the right candidates that will sit on that seat? You know,
Let me quickly chip in.
Without abusing the power.
Let me chip in this one as well. Why you also think that looking for the right person to fill that so as to, do away with the issue of abusing power. How about empowering the institution itself such that you have a system that anybody who comes in will have to fit into that system?
No, one thing is this: we need to get certain things clear. Institutions are different from people that come in. An institution has what you call policies or bylaws or procedures. And what are policies? Policies are statements that convey the philosophy of an institution in this case, and must be seen to be reflected in the thinking of the strategic leaders that will preside over the institutions.
Right.
Just like national policies are statements that are supposed to convey the national philosophy of Nigeria, and when they convey that, they must be seen to be reflected in the political thinking of our political leaders. So
let me come in a bit, Mr. Zaka. Because of our time, maybe we should talk more a little bit, just in a few minutes before we go on break. We should talk more a bit how these document, even though the president has requested for amendment on some sections, which some people agreed with, some don't agree with it. Let's look at how this will impact the value chain in the sector.
Yeah, so straight away, first of all, if regardless of how weak or strong the institution, the minister will be, if the minister is the wrong minister, he will abuse and adulterate the power. Then as far as the document is concerned, before now, we knew that the industry is divided into upstream, midstream, and downstream. But the midstream of Nigeria has not really existed or been working because we have not been refining. And when you talk about midstream, you are talking about the activities that will convey the crude oil from the point where it was brought to the surface, called the Christmas tree or wellhead, to where it is supposed to be processed or refined. And because our refineries have not been working, the midstream was largely dead. So the only aspect of midstream that existed was moving the crude oil from wellheads to the point of export, where they needed to be exported, to foreign refineries. So midstream didn't exist. If midstream comes back now and we start refining, it will be a boom, because hauling and movement will be there. Then in terms of the downstream, of course, it is in the downstream that you have finished products. Even when you look at exploration chain, general production chain, the exploration and processing side don't really produce so much when you are dealing with raw material. It's the finished products. That is where you see derivatives and you make money. So even with the downstream, if we refuse to refine internally, we will still not get cheaper petrol, we will not get cheaper cooking gas, we will not get cheaper diesel, and we will not get cheaper derivatives. Just like our natural gas. If we refuse to use our natural gas, because from natural gas you will get ammonia, from ammonia you will get urea, from urea you will get fertilizer. If we refuse to harness it internally, that means we will continue to import fertilizer from outside. So the key thing is, we love the reforms, but let it be geared toward making sure there is internal domestication, internal production, and internal utilization of our raw materials and processing them into finished goods, whether they are crude oil or you are talking about solid raw materials.
Interesting. I think all of this you just said are in the document. So the next time we'll be talking, of course, we'll be looking at the implementation strategy and the framework. All right. So at this point, okay. At this point, I just we can't exhaust this discourse on this show today. So I want to thank you for your time on the program today. Bala Zaka is petroleum engineer and chartered accountant. Thank you so much for your time on Business Breakfast.
Thank you. for the opportunity given to me to discuss Nigerian concerns and issues and participation.
Thank you. You're welcome.